Thank you so much for joining us in person and also on Zoom. We're delighted to have Jessica Woodend, am I saying that correctly?
Yeah.
From Marine Mammals of Maine here with us this evening. For those of you on Zoom, if you have questions or comments throughout the presentation, you can type them into the chat or Q&A, and I will read them out loud. And people in this audience, I think you already know how to ask questions. So Jessica Woodend has been a volunteer with Marine Mammals of Maine for the last 6 years, helping with response, rescue, animal care, and education. And she's been in the field of wildlife education and animal care for the last 15 years, working all over the country. Marine Mammals of Maine responds to stranded marine mammals and sea turtles in southern and midcoast Maine, cares for sick, injured, and abandoned seals from all over New England, studies East Coast marine mammal populations, and educates about global marine mammal conservation. And I think we'll hear some about that tonight. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much for that intro. We're going to go over some of that as we get started. As you heard, I'm a volunteer with Marine Mammals of Maine. Now, Marine Mammals of Maine is a bit of a mouthful to say over and over, so I'm going to shorten it. We take MMoME, which is still a little bit of a mouthful. It almost looks like it says mommy, so that's what I'm going to call it. If you hear me say mommy, this is what I'm talking about, Marine Mammals of Maine. And I really love that acronym because then we can tell people if you're on the beach, you see an animal, call mommy. That's us. So we are a nonprofit organization based out of Brunswick. We've been around about 11 years now. We started out working with the MARC Center down at UNE in Portland. The MARC Center was the Marine Animal Rescue Center. And we were the ones that would respond to animals and bring them to the MARC Center. And in 2014, the MARC Center abruptly shut down without any notice to anybody, and we had nowhere to take any animals on the busiest weekend of the year, which is Memorial Weekend. So we were responding to animals with nowhere to take them. We quickly had to start calling other centers on the East Coast, particularly Connecticut and Massachusetts, to transport the animals hundreds of miles away to a center that could take them in. What we are finding is that, of course, when you don't feel well, the last thing you want to do is go on a road trip for quite some distance. So we knew we had to change what happened here in Maine, and we started our own triage center. That meant that we were permitted through NOAA to triage an animal. That means stabilize it. We had 4 days with that animal to help it feel a little bit better in order to better survive that transport to a full-time center. So we did that for a few years, but I believe it was 2016 or 2017, we were granted long-term care permits. So now we are able to keep these animals long-term. We started out as a small triage center here on the East Coast. We are the only marine rescue hospital in the state of Maine. We are now the largest on the East Coast. So in just under 10 years, we've grown rapidly. A lot of that is due to the need for this. Now in Maine, we get around 300 to 400 calls for animals throughout the year. We get enough animals through our doors, or enough calls for animals, we could fill all of the centers on the East Coast with seals from Maine. And I think, we just have such a large coastline too, and we get lots of people on the beaches in the summer finding these animals. So we get a lot more calls than other centers do. So what we do is we run a 24-hour response hotline. That means you can call us any time of the day or night and let us know if you see an animal on the beach. This is true for anything that's living or deceased. We want to know about all of them. Now, if the animal is alive and it's looking like it needs a little bit of care, we're going to bring that animal in and provide that care at our hospital in Brunswick. If that animal is deceased, we might come and record some data about that animal, maybe length to tell how old it may have been, the species, the gender, anything we could get from that animal. And for freshly deceased, we're able to take samples from that animal to better learn more about what's going on out in the seal population in the ocean, or learn what could have happened to that animal. We also do education like this. So we find that every year we get human interaction cases. That means we have animals come to our center that may not have needed to come to our center if people better understood what they should and shouldn't do when they come across these animals. And we'll get into that a little bit in just a bit. Now, we cover over 2,500 miles of the Maine coast. We do have a small staff. We do seasonal interns, and we have about 60 volunteers all up and down that line on the map there. Now, we like to have as many as possible along the coast so that if we get a call for an animal, we can send the closest person to that animal to get there as quickly as possible. The rest of the coastline is covered by Allied Whale. That is an organization out of the College of the Atlantic in Bar Harbor. They are a response network, but if they pick up an animal that needs care, it comes to us because they don't have a center to bring these animals to. They come to us. They help us cover the coast. So we cover from Kittery to Rockland. So right here in Camden, we're kind of on the edge of our border line there. So we may respond to calls here if we have a volunteer nearby, or we might reach out to Allied Whale to come check on the animals and let us know what's going on. So the animals that we're usually caring for, so I mentioned that we're marine mammals of Maine. We're looking at mammals that live in and around the ocean. They breathe air. They have to come up regularly. Some of them have fur on their bodies. They give live birth, nurse their young. The animals that we see the most, that we're getting the most calls for, are the pinnipeds. Pinniped means flipper foot. So these are animals with flippers as feet. And here in Maine, we have what we call true seals. We have two groups of seals, true seals and eared seals. Eared seals are the sea lions that are more prominent on the West Coast, not really around here. Now, those eared seals, they do have floppy outer ears just like we do. Our seals here in Maine just have an opening on the side of their head. They don't have the floppy ears. In sea lions, if you've ever seen them in person or seen photos or videos, they can use their big back flippers to waddle around on the rocks. Our seals can't do that. Our seals, their back flippers are not quite big enough, and instead they have to do a belly bounce to move around. They bounce on their bellies to move around on land. They don't look as graceful on land as they do in the water, but they do spend a lot of time out of the water. So I like to consider seals as semi-aquatic. That means they're sharing their time between water and land. A lot of times people call us and say, oh no, the seal's out of the water, what do I do? Just leave it alone, it's probably taking a nap. It might be warming up, resting after a lot of travel, something like that. Now, if you see a whale out of the water, that of course is not normal. There might be something going on with that animal. They are fully aquatic, they need to be in the water. Seals, on the other hand, don't. Seals spend most of the time in the water traveling or looking for their food. The rest of the time they're out resting and warming up their bodies. Now this one is taking a nap in our center. I wanted to point out the nose. You can see the nostrils are open on this animal. As you can imagine, and maybe as you've experienced, getting water up your nose is not a fun feeling. So their nose is closed when it's resting, and they use muscles to open their nose in order to get their breath. You're not really going to see them breathing out of their mouth like dogs do. If you do see that, they're not feeling well. That's a big sign. They're breathing mostly through their nose and usually just eating through their mouths. So this one is a baby harbor seal that came into our care. Now these animals get partial and sometimes supervised swim time. They don't spend all their time in the water right away. When these animals are born, harbor seals can be swimming the day that they're born. They just have those instincts, but they don't have the blubber on their bodies to really stay in the water for very long. That water gets really cold on these little ones, so they have to come out of the water, and they're gaining weight from nursing from their mom. A seal's milk is really fatty, and they can gain tons of weight every day. Now, if you imagine how big a blue whale is, they're the largest animal that wouldn't even fit in this room. The babies are 20 feet when they're born. The newborns are 20 feet long, and they can gain 200 pounds a day on their mom's milk. So marine mammals have really fatty milk. Not quite so fatty for a seal, but they're gaining weight pretty quickly. Now, these ones that are in our care, they don't have that weight yet on them, so we give them swim time every once in a while. I want to point out those big eyes, really good at seeing in the murky water, and these whiskers. And you can see those nostrils are closed on this one. Those whiskers, just like a cat or other animals using them to feel around, these whiskers are 8 times better than a cat's whiskers. They're really great at feeling movement in the water. There's actually an adult seal that is blind. We don't know exactly what happened to it, but something happened and it lost its sight, had some injury, and it's lived off the coast of Rockland and Camden for years and has been able to fish without seeing just by use of whiskers and knowing what it's doing. And it's one of the plumpest seals around, so it's doing well. Now, a baby seal losing its eyesight, that would be more detrimental because they're still learning how to fish. They're not quite as experienced as an adult is. Now, I want to go through the seals that we find here in Maine throughout the year. Now, if you've seen a seal before and it's been on the beach, odds are it's probably a harbor seal. Those are the most common ones that we have here, and that's this one. They are gray, kind of spotty. They lay on their sides like that. They're super cute. They almost look like a dog face. The other ones that are here year round are these ones. These are the gray seals. Also gray, kind of spotty. The biggest way to tell gray seals from a harbor seal is their nose. Gray seals have really big noses. They almost have like a horse-shaped face as opposed to a little dog. So if you've seen a seal pop up in the water and it has a big old nose, probably a gray seal. So these are here all year. Gray seals are born in the wintertime on Seal Island, which is off the coast here. They are born with a fluffy layer of fur. It's called their lanugo. They are born with that because they're born in the winter, so they need a little extra layer of warmth. Our harbor seals, on the other hand, are born in May and June. They don't need that extra layer of fur, so they actually shed that in utero before they're born. Usually, if we see a harbor seal born with that layer of fur, we know that it was born a little bit early, and they will shed that fur. So this is the gray seal, and I have to say I fell in love with gray seals after we had a few come through our center recently and got to experience how loud they are and how vocal they are, which I'll show you in just a bit. Now, seasonally, we get the harp seals here in the wintertime. Now, harp seals, I call them the National Geographic seal because if you've seen a picture of a seal, they're white, fluffy little babies, and they're the cutest thing in the world. They're always on the cover of National Geographic. Those are baby harp seals. These are born in the Arctic on ice floes. Now, when they're about a year old, the juvenile, that's what their coloring looks like. They look a lot like a harbor seal. Their behavior is a bit different though. But then when they become an adult, after a few years, they get the white body, dark face, and the dark harp-shaped pattern on their backs. So they're the only ones that look pretty different from going from younger to older, but they're very distinct. So if they're white like that, they are a harp seal. We do, yes. They come here in the wintertime. It's a little bit warmer here in the winter for them than it is where they're from. We do see adults here and there, but not quite as many adults as we see juveniles. So last year was actually one of the first years that we didn't have more than a few harp seals come through. Last year was the winter of gray seals. We had a lot of gray seals, but usually a few harps every year. And usually we have a handful of them come through our center. Now the last one is the hooded seal. These ones are also only here in the winter. These ones are pretty rare though. In the 10 or 11 years we've been running, we've only seen one of these come through. And there was one a couple years ago in Massachusetts, but I think it's pretty uncommon to see them. And that's actually a good thing because these are the most aggressive of all the seals. All of them can be aggressive, as cute and cuddly as they look. I promise you they are not. These ones are born with their teeth, and they have the shortest nursing period of any mammal because of that. They stay with mom for 3 days. They drink her milk for 3 days and then they are on their own. Our harbor seals stay with their mom for 1 month and then they're on their own. So these hooded seals, we don't see these too often. The top picture is the younger version, and this is the adult. The younger one I like to think of as the alien seal. They just have really big eyes for such a small face. And then the adults look like they're wearing a hood, like their face is shadowed. And that's how they got their name. So we're mostly going to focus on harbor seals, a few gray seals, and a few harp seals. I have a few pictures and videos of some of our patients. Since we don't really see hooded seals, that'll probably be the last of those. We also respond to cetaceans. Cetaceans are dolphins, whales, and porpoises. Now, if we get a call for these animals, they're most likely not alive anymore. And that's when we can do some samples. We'll do a necropsy, which is an autopsy for animals. We'll try to figure out what happened to them, see if there's any patterns we can pick up on. This one down here, the harbor porpoise, this one was alive, just not feeling very well. Sometimes if they do come up close to shore and they are alive, we'll try to refloat them out to get to deeper water. This harbor porpoise though, he came in to not only our center, he was transferred to New York that has a large center with a pool big enough for him. We named him Noodle because he had pool noodles underneath him to help him float when he wasn't feeling great, so he could still breathe and be in the water. He was rehabilitated and sent back to the ocean, which is exciting. But mostly what we're going to see from now on are the seals, because that's what we get the most. So what to do if we find a stranded animal? Now, these animals are protected by federal law. All marine mammals are here in the United States. And each one of them has a little bit different regulations around them, but for the majority of them, the law is you have to stay about 150 feet away from all marine mammals, whether on land or in the water. Now, of course, if you're out on the water and a seal pops up next to you, you can't control that, right? But if you're on the beach and you see one, that is now your job to stay back away from it, because these animals are a bit like us. We internalize stress and they do too. We might not be showing our signs of stress on the outside and they might not either, but that doesn't mean it's not going on inside. Each species has kind of a different stress reaction, but all of them can be detrimental to their health. So that law is to make sure that animal can get the rest that it needs, conserve the energy that it needs to, and doesn't go into that stress response. So 150 feet, it's pretty far. It's about 3 school buses back to back. The rule that I like to follow is if I'm at the beach and I can put my thumb out, close one eye and cover that animal with my thumb, then I'm far enough away. If I can't completely cover it with my thumb, then I'm too close, if that makes sense. Another way to look at it is if that animal is paying attention to you or your presence is causing them to change their behavior, then you're too close. If you're too close and it's moving away, that means it's time to get back. We've seen a lot of people try to push the seals back into the water. When that's not what they need, they are out of the water for a reason, to warm up or rest up. So letting the animal decide what it needs to do is what we recommend. And I'll kind of show you some of the things that we look at when we show up to assess an animal and its health. We're going to skip that. Here's some examples of kind of things that happen that shouldn't have happened. In that top corner, all the people on the beach, if you see all the blue swim trunks right in the middle, there is a baby seal on the beach right in front of all these people. Now, we see a lot of abandoned pups in the summertime when harbor seals are born. And this is because since they can't be in the water for too long yet, their moms will leave them on the beach or on the rocks. And she says, you stay right here. And that baby does. It stays right where it was put. It might move around a little bit, but it stays right in that area. Mom will go out and get her fish and she comes back to nurse the baby. Now, us humans, we care so much about baby animals. When we come across a baby animal by itself, we think, oh my gosh, it needs our help. When really most wild animals spend a lot of time on their own from the get-go, and they're probably just waiting for their mom. That's true for baby birds, baby bunnies, fawn, baby deer. Now that baby that's in the middle of that picture, if the mom were to pop back up to come back and she sees all those people, her first response is going to be, that's scary, I'm going to go. And now that baby doesn't have its mom, doesn't have the milk that it needs, and now it's abandoned. And that's when we have to step in and bring it in. Their best chance of success, of course, is out in the wild with mom. And we don't want to bring in any animal that doesn't absolutely need us. So that's why those laws are in place, especially for baby seals, because mom needs to have a chance in the space to come back and care for the baby. So that means touching the animal is technically against the law. And causing a lot of undue stress. They don't need to be moved around on boogie boards or anything like that. Also, the one on the bottom has some fishing line wrapped around it. If you see any line or rope on the beach, if it's safe for you to do so, picking that up can help prevent things like this. And also, if you see an animal like this, giving us a call first. Some people want to just tear the wire or the rope right off. But there's sort of a process. We have to make sure that the wounds aren't going to get infected. We have to keep it clean. So we don't want to just rip those right off if we don't have to. So sometimes we'll show up to a seal and we say, oh, yeah, this is just a baby that's resting. We'll put up a sign. We don't put up a sign unless we have a volunteer who's going to be nearby, letting people know what's going on, because signs tend to attract people to them. So we just want people to be aware that there's something there on the beach. And once they see it's a resting seal, knowing that we've checked it out, we're monitoring, and just to leave this baby alone. This baby, if I showed up to assess this animal, I'm going to tell the staff on the hotline that, okay, this baby is lifting its head. It's looking right at me. I'm noticing that it is looking healthy in terms of body condition. It doesn't look too skinny. I'm also going to look at those eyes. It looks like its eyes are weeping. Those wet eyes, those are hydration rings. That means mom has been there recently. This baby is well hydrated. The first thing I'm going to look for is crusty eyes. And if they're getting a little crusty, it's been a little while since it's had any nourishment. So those are the things I'm looking at. This baby was 100% healthy and best to stay with mom. So we monitored until mom came back. If mom doesn't come back, usually, unless it's a really dire situation, we do not pick up a baby for 24 hours. We will monitor for one whole day to give mom a chance to come back, and then we will bring it in if it needs it. There have been situations where that had to change. Yes.
I'm just wondering, how long can they breathe out of the water?
They don't need to be in the water to breathe. So they breathe through their lungs just like we do. They breathe air. So they have to come up out of the water for air.
And it doesn't bother their skin to stay out
Nope.
for a day or two? They
Nope.
don't have to be wet?
They don't have to be wet.
Okay.
No. In fact, at the end, if you want to come up here, there's a seal fur on the table here. You can feel that their fur is actually really thin. Their fur is not meant to keep them warm. Their fur is meant to keep them protected from the sun when they're out of the water. That's sunblock for them. That's why whales aren't covered in fur. They don't need that sunblock. The seals do because they're out a lot. And that blubber is what keeps them warm. So their fur is actually pretty thin, and they can be dry indefinitely. They're really only in the water to move from place to place and get their food. So it's breathing just like you and I are. Now, if they do need to come into care, a lot of times they're not able to eat on their own once they're not feeling very well. So the quickest way for us to get them fluids or any medication and eventually formula is through tube feeding them like this. This is a 2-person job. We slide the tube down into their belly and we pour in anything that it's supposed to have after talking with our vet. This is really quick. Once we get it down, we can do this really fast. That means that the baby's not spending too much time around us humans. We're not sitting there snuggling the babies as much as we want to sometimes. We're not sitting there cuddling these babies because what's best for them is to learn to fear us and not to get attached, because we're not going to be in the ocean giving them food once we return them. So we're very hands off as much as possible. Through the baby phase, though, we do have to pick them up for things like this and weighing and all that. And then as they start to wean, so they go from formula towards fish after about a month old, their aggression starts. And we like to see that actually, because we're like, okay, you got the spunk, you got the seal spunk, you know what you're doing. You're supposed to be a little bit timid around humans. So we wait for that little attitude to kick in, and it usually does. This seal had a bit of a cold, so the best way to get it what it needs is to put the medicine into the air, a nebulizer treatment. So this one just got done with its nebulizer. We opened the window for it and it was very curious. They are very curious, adorable animals. Now, our ultimate goal is to rescue the ones that need it, leave the ones that don't, and then care for them until we can release them back to their ocean home. That's the ultimate goal. We're not sending these off to stay in captivity. They are going back to their ocean home as often as possible. This is a good example of what a baby that's not feeling so good looks like. The top picture there. This one was only about 24 hours old. This one was my first rescue on the team. He was found on Popham Beach, if you're familiar with that. He was out on an island that the access to it disappears at high tide. So we did have to make a quick decision to remove him from the island before the tide came up, and he was very thin. So we knew that he hasn't seen mom in a little while. Now we kept him in captivity or in our care for a few months. They have to hit certain milestones. They go through fish school, learning how to eat fish. They start out with a fish smoothie after their formula. They move on to dead fish and eventually live fish. And they have to show us that they can catch live fish. They also have to show us that they can put on the weight. They have to pack on the pounds. They do not get released under 50 pounds. 50 pounds means that they have the blubber on their body to withstand the cold temperatures in the water. So this little guy was released at the end of the summer, looking nice and round. We love a chunky seal. So this one was in need of care and he got the care he needed and was released back to his home. This one was a really interesting case. This was one of our oldest seals that we've had come through our center. Normally we have the younger ones. She was about 3 or 4 years old, a harbor seal. It's a really beautiful pattern. Now, she was obviously not feeling very well on that bottom photo there. She was about 57 pounds. She should have been over 100. She did have a respiratory infection, a bit of a cold. So she was experiencing some stress that wasn't allowing her to eat. So she came into our care, and in just about 2 months, we released her as her plump adult self. We were waiting for her to get a little sassier. She was a big seal, the biggest one of the biggest ones we've had. She was just the calmest, sweetest seal. Their personalities are all very different, and she taught us a lot. Being that she was older, we got to see them do behaviors that we don't see the young ones do yet. So she was a bit of a goofball. She would just stick her face in the pool and watch the fish swim around. But we also got to learn how they nap when they're in the water. We got to actually see it happening. So she looks like a big potato down at the bottom of the pool there, but they can hold their breath for about 15 or 20 minutes for a quick power nap. Now, they do have to breathe air still, so they will come to the surface and just stick their nose out and they'll float there and take a little nap with their nose out of the water. This is what they do when they're out to sea. They can be out to sea for weeks at a time with nowhere to haul out. So this is how they get their rest and take their naps. And we got to see her doing this and it was really fun. Now, we always tag every seal that leaves our doors. We do a back flipper tag. That way, if they show up again, we know that we've seen this animal and know its whole story. We will sometimes put a satellite tag on some of them. Satellite tags are a bit pricey. They're usually $4,000 to $7,000. And we only do this when we're able to. And we did put one on our bigger seal patient I just showed you because we could track where she went after she was released and see how different that was from when we released the younger ones. So this seal that we released that's tagged, we released it around Rhode Island. It went down to New York, out to sea, up to Nova Scotia, back out to sea, and eventually the tag stopped transmitting. And that's okay, that's normal because they are glued onto the seal's back with some surgical glue and they do shed their fur. So they are gonna eventually lose that tag. We don't want it to bother them forever. So it's just a short-term watch where they go after they're released kind of thing. And it's really neat to track them.
That's a pretty big tag. It's like this big, right?
Yeah, the base of it is a big square, and then yeah, there's a little computer bit there on top of it. So it is, it's not small. Um, it doesn't seem to bother them too much, and like I said, it will eventually fall off. And that has to come out of the water to be able to send us the messages of where it is and stuff like that. So you noticed on the picture here, the lines are just like, we didn't get any transmissions between those points. The points are just where she really was at the surface and sending satellite information.
Wow, she traveled a long way.
She did in a very short time. Yeah.
First to the first, that's a long.
Yeah, she was on a mission, it looked like. So I want to show you some patients that we've had in the last couple of years, and we're getting to the videos, which are absolutely adorable. This is a harp seal. In the winter time, these are the ones that we see pretty often. This one was just in our care for a little while. Now the babies need to be with us for a few months usually, but sometimes we'll get some in the winter who just need a little bit of TLC. They might stay with us for a few weeks and then be off on their own. So this one was only with us for a short time.
Have you looked at whether their experience with you is a detriment to them? You no doubt track them after you release them.
Right.
And do they normally do okay?
They normally do, yes. And, we do have the tags just in case they do show up not alive anymore, then we can keep track of that. And that has been very rare. We actually last year got a photo of a seal that was out on a rock and it had our tag on it. And he was one of the first ones that came in 10 years ago. So that was great to see. And so we don't have a lot of calls of seals that are tagged that are no longer alive. That's, it happens, but most case we just might not ever hear about them again.
And do you usually tag every seal that comes to you and that you take care of?
We tag every seal with the back flipper tag. We tag every seal that comes through our doors that spends more than a day with us. Yeah. I want to show you a video of harp seals. Harp seals, that since they're born in the Arctic on ice floes, they love to eat ice and snow. That's one way they stay hydrated. And when they're on the beach, if someone approaches them, they're probably not going to move like a harbor seal might move away from you. A harp seal is going to be like, yeah, try me, like I'm not going anywhere. But it does start to stress, and its stress response is they are stress eaters. They're going to try to eat ice and snow, and if that's not around them, especially here, we don't get as much ice and snow as they do, so they might start eating sand and rocks, and then all of a sudden they got a belly full of rocks, and that requires surgery usually to remove. And seals don't do super well with surgeries because it triggers their dive response. When they go under anesthesia, it causes them to think that they're diving and they hold their breath. And so it's something that doesn't happen unless there's no other option. So it is rough. We've had seals come through it, but we try to just avoid them eating the sand and rocks. And that's part of why staying far away from them is so important, so that they don't start stress eating. So this one is getting a little bit of snow time as it started feeling better. And you can see it just absolutely loves it. It's like a puppy playing in the snow.
How old is this seal?
So this one is about a year-old harp seal. So still a baby, still curious. The next one, this one has sound. We'll see how that goes. This is the gray seal that showed me why I love gray seals so much. So this is what happened anytime we were a minute late with her dinner. She would let us know about it. So we don't name our animals usually. Sometimes we do have sponsors for different events that have donated a certain amount and they get to name one of the seals that's getting released. But in our center, these animals just get numbers. And every year we start over with number 1. And right now, I think we're close to 300. The highest number we have at our center is 227. But there's been more since then. She was number 8 a couple years ago, and she was a spunky little girl. She was released back into the ocean. And she made her mark because anyone in the office making a phone call, this is what you'd hear if you were on the other end of the line, just the yelling.
Do they have claws on the end of the?
They do, yes. So they have finger bones in their flippers, and that's why you could see one of them, it kind of looked like it was digging. They can kind of bend those fingers a little bit, and they do have claws on the end of those flippers. Again, another reason they're not cute and cuddly. They do have claws, and a lot of times they might lay on the beach and they'll swat their flipper, and people, sometimes I hear them say, oh, it's waving at me. And really that's like, you better stay back. That's a warning. Yeah.
Are they routinely put on a respirator when they do need surgery?
Yeah, it's just like if we were to have surgery, go under anesthesia, and then they are tubed so that they can still breathe. It's just their body telling them to hold their breath. That's just their natural reaction to it for some reason. Great question. This is another harp seal. This is from a few years ago, but I keep this video in because she was my favorite and she's hilarious. So she was number 275, and she was super shy at first, but then her personality really came out. We would be in the room and she wouldn't be doing anything. And it's kind of like a little kid. We left the room and all of a sudden we heard all this noise. When we came back, she's quiet like this, like, I'm not doing anything. And so we set up a camera to see what she was getting into here. And this is what we found. This is what happened when we checked on her. Very curious. We can see someone watching.
So it's a stressful situation. Is she stressing?
That is more curiosity. She's trying to learn her surroundings and trying to escape, most likely, trying to get out of the pool, just seeing what was around her. That was more exploring than stress. Yeah, but you could tell she was a little bit nervous when people were in the room, and she would stop doing that. This one is another harp seal. Harp seals, I guess, are just the funniest recently. This one was down in Wells. We got calls for him. He was just sitting on the beach, and that's normal. Now, a harbor seal is usually not there the next day. It's not in the same spot. A harp seal might stay in the same spot for multiple days. And that's because it just traveled a long ways and it's gonna just get the rest it needs right on that spot. Now this one, he was in that spot for quite some time and he was growling at people. So we went to check him out a couple of times and he seemed okay. But then after a number of days and we thought he'd be gone, he was still there. So we decided to come in, bring him in, do a little blood test, make sure he wasn't dealing with anything that we weren't noticing. And turns out he was fine. So we released him the next day. Now we released him in a quiet spot, hours away from this busy beach he was hanging out at. A couple days later, guess where he was? Back on the busy beach, right where we found him. So this video I wanted to show you really quick to see how they move when they're on land. He's going to do a little belly bounce. You're also going to see a green mark on his back. Since we only had him for less than 24 hours, we did not give him a flipper tag. He just got marked with a non-toxic paint that would eventually wash off. And that's just so if he came back, we knew exactly who he was, and he came back. So this is his little story. Those nice, healthy hydration rings. We decided to release him the next day. See that green on his back? He was still a year old. Yeah, this is a juvenile harp seal. And there he goes. Like an inchworm almost, bouncing his way back to the ocean to go terrorize another beach. All right, so let me show you what this summer looked like. This was one of our first patients of the summer, a baby harbor seal. That little bit of fluffy fur. You can see the hydration rings on her eyes. She wasn't very healthy until after a little bit of time with us. She was an abandonment case. So she was dehydrated, not feeling super great. But this is before she had dinner. This is after. They calm right down after they got a nice full belly. So they don't look like this anymore. This was the beginning of June. This is how little they are. Now, she was about this big. A baby harbor seal is gonna be, a healthy baby harbor seal is gonna be 20 to 25 pounds when they're born. So they're not tiny. They're pretty good size, but not compared to what they're going to turn into. When we see them, they're usually not feeling great, so they might be more around 15-ish pounds, and that's about what she was. So these are just some threats to marine life. A lot of times plastic pollution is such a problem right now. That's a huge threat to these animals. Fishing gear, boat strikes, things like that. We see all of these issues every year. How we can help out. I will show you, our website is at the top there if you want to get more information about what we do. We also have an Amazon wish list on there. We put all of the supplies we need to take care of these animals on our wish list. And if people feel like it, they can send us those items. We also have a shop on our website with lots of cute seal stuff, all benefiting the animals that come through our center. We are also on these social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And at our website, you can actually sign up for a newsletter. And once a month, they send out a video of what's been going on that month at the center. You might get to catch up with some patients. Right now, today, we just had a seal release. One of our harbor seals that came in a couple of months ago was just released back into the ocean. So that was really exciting. We had another release 2 weeks ago. We usually post, if we're able to do a big public release, we post that on our social media, and usually the news will pick it up as well. We invite the public to come and watch these animals go back to their ocean home, so you can kind of see, and supporters can see what their support is going towards, and it's really fun to watch them return home. And for the babies, they've only spent a day or so in the ocean. And so after being 3 months old, this is their first experience getting back into the ocean. So it's fun to watch them get knocked around in the waves a little bit once they realize, like, this isn't my pool I just came from. And to explore seaweed and things like that. Like, what is this? So it's really fun to see, and we try to do those when we can.
What do you mean they only spend a day in the water?
A lot of the babies that we see are around 24 hours old that have come into our center. So they've only experienced the ocean for a day before they came to the hospital. And then they're with us for a few months. And so this is like day 2 in the hospital, and or day 2 in the ocean, and they're, 3 months old now. So it takes a little bit, but sometimes they're a little bit nervous. Sometimes you just see them like go right in and be gone. But you can almost see that little switch once they realize, and then they take off, and you might see them pop up and they're further and further out. So it's really cool to watch them get reacclimated, but it happens quick. Yeah. So I just want to thank you all for listening to All About MMoME, Marine Mammals of Maine. This is one of our cuter patients. This one, her name, we called her Preemie. We did name her. She was born a little bit early a few years ago. She was the smallest pup we've ever gotten in at around 11 pounds. And she was a fighter, and she grew and was released, and it was really exciting. But she's really cute. Look at that face. Our hotline number is at the bottom there if you want to have that. I also have, for those of you that are in person, I do have these stickers that have our phone number on them. They're great to have, so you know who to call if you come across a seal on the beach. If you are interested in feeling what a harp seal pelt feels like, their fur, that is real harp seal fur. This is a rib from a minke whale, if you want to see how big that is. It's also neat to see how skinny they are. They're designed to dive deep into the ocean. So their rib cage actually is built to cave in a little bit so that the water pressure deep underwater doesn't crack their ribs. So they're built to bend in a little. That's why they're so skinny. But this is also why it's a problem if they're out of the water. All of their weight is resting on these skinny ribs, and they're not built to be out of the water. So while they can be dry, they can still breathe. This is kind of what the problem is for them, since they're well designed for ocean life. But anyway, if you want to check that out, feel free. If anyone on the Zoom has questions, feel free to put those in. If anyone else has questions, feel free to ask. Otherwise, enjoy your evening.
So poaching is a problem. What do they want their skin?
That's not as big of a problem here as it is in other places where in some cultures it was okay to hunt the seals and use their pelts. That's where this one came from. Use their meat and then their pelts for shelter or clothing, things like that. There are still places where poaching happens. A lot of that is more on the West Coast than it is here. And a lot of it is because sometimes we've seen these animals, their populations dip a bit, and it doesn't seem to be as many of them. And when their populations are protected and are healthy again, and there's higher numbers of them, sometimes people in different industries, fishing industries, they think there's too many of them. When really it's just their historic numbers that they used to have. So that happens more in other places, not so much here. Yes.
I was out at Colbert Island last week.
Yeah.
And rode from a little cove between the island and the mainland out to some ledges, and there must have been 20 or 25 seals out there.
That's great.
And I saw one up and set up, then I saw another, and then another.
Yeah.
And I swear, whenever I see seals, they're always looking straight at me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's true with all these 20 or so seals.
Yeah.
If someone come up, someone go down, and someone come up and someone go down, but whenever they came up, they were looking straight at me. So I figured they kind of knew I was there.
Yeah, they're very well aware of their surroundings. So seals that are popping up out of the water and they're looking right at you, they're just looking at that is different, that wasn't there before, and that could be a potential predator. So they're very much aware of their surroundings, and that's why they're all looking at you, is making sure that you're not doing anything unexpected.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's really cool to see that many. Usually seals are pretty solitary animals, except for when there's good feeding grounds, then they're all going to be over there and they'll find their own little spot in the rocks. But if you watch them long enough, if they're close to each other and like they're kind of like a brother and sister, if one like bumps the other one, they'll start swatting at each other and like, don't touch me. So they'll tolerate each other as long as it's good feeding nearby. Otherwise, they like to be on their own.
Do you see shark injuries?
Yes, we do every year see shark injuries. That has never changed. It's always been a thing. We've always had sharks off the coast and always will. So yeah, we always see those every year. Not too many, but there's always some. And really, it's the bigger sharks that are predators to seals. They're the ones big enough to eat seals, so they're usually pretty good at what they do.
Mm-hmm. Got a question on Zoom. How young are the harp seals when they migrate from the Arctic?
That's a great question. So they're usually born, they come down here right before they're about a year old. So they spend their first winter down here.
Are they territorial, or, if somebody is in rehabilitation and you let them back into the wild, it's easier for them to acclimate with other seals, or is it kind of, as you were saying before, that they're kind of solitary, but if they go out and to bunch?
Yeah, so they're not very territorial when it comes to this is good feeding ground, as long as that they're all able to get some food. Where they get territorial is just their personal bubble, really. And that's the same for sea lions too, or and seals. If one pops up at a rock where another one is, that one might growl at them or swat at them or something like that and say like, don't come over here. But really, that's as territorial as they get. Great question.
Awesome. Zoom, is there, how do you sign up for the newsletter? I don't see it on the website.
It should be on the website somewhere. It might be towards the top. There might be an option for get involved, and there might be something with the newsletter. If not, there's a email address on the website that you can send us an email and we'll put you on the list.
Oh yeah, I think if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, subscribe to our mailing list.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Cool.
So I was rowing in Rockland Harbor from my boat to a dock on the north end one night in the dark, and I heard the most deep guttural sounds, and I'm not gonna, I'll spare you.
The impression.
It scared me. It really did. It sounded like a bear, but there were several of them. Or it sounded like a bear, a very salty, fishy bear.
And it was coming from the water, the sound.
Yeah, and so
Yeah, it could
the
be.
next day I asked some of the fishermen who were around there, and they said, yeah, there's a little floating dock out there. The seals like hang out there.
So they're yelling at each other, growling at each other out
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
I guess they like to frequent that spot and rest.
Yeah.
But I didn't know why they were making those sounds.
Yeah, that's a territorial, like, this is mine, go somewhere else. Yeah. That's funny.
Comment on Zoom. Very thankful that you and your team are available to help and assist these beautiful creatures when needed. Thank you for taking the time to share your knowledge this evening. So informative for us landlubbers.
That's very nice. Thank you. Thank you all for your time. If you have other questions, feel free to come up and ask. I'll stick around for a few minutes. Otherwise, enjoy your evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Of course.
Yeah, what's the story of this seal?